Hey friends, on our podcast today, we're going to deal with the national reckoning that's taking place of many organizations that have been receiving generous portions of our taxpayer dollars. Let me highlight a few of those. NPR, PBS, Planned Parenthood. These organizations have been cashing in on literally millions of dollars of taxpayer money. And what are they promoting? They're promoting a very one-sided, wicked agenda that goes against our most deeply held Christian values here in America. We're going to talk about that day of reckoning and why we should all be celebrating the courageous efforts of this administration to hold these organizations accountable. Not to mention, we got some good news perhaps coming on TSA and the quality of your flight experience. We'll talk about that as well. Hope you'll join us today.
Hey, welcome to the Ron Johnson Discipleship Podcast.
We're so glad you guys are here with us for our weekly dose of biblical worldview and, generally speaking, common sense. With a little wit and humor, I hope, in the midst of all of this. You be witty, and I'll try to be myself.
Humorous.
Hey, we have shared in recent weeks that if you are a Bible-believing person who's trying to apply biblical principles to real life, this is like Santa Claus has come to town, all right? It's like Christmas every day. We have so much to talk about, so many bold and aggressive moves towards sanity right now that it's just a great time to be alive. And unless you're being brainwashed again by mainstream media, the average person on the street is incredibly excited about what's happening. There's law and order is being restored, and we're moving back to merit-based rewarding of people. We're trying to balance a budget. We're trying to get rid of waste and fraud and mismanagement. The crazy LGBTQ stuff that's been pushed in our school systems for years under Biden, getting ripped out. All the racist DEI stuff that we've had to be subject to, dead on arrival. And again, if you're a Bible-believing Christian, you cannot help but give three cheers to this administration and what is happening. Because bottom line, as you pointed out in a previous podcast, they're doing what they ran on, and what they ran on was overwhelmingly cheered and supported by the American people. And minus what the barrage of the mainstream media propaganda, the truth is most Americans are very, very excited about the direction our country is headed and very, very excited about what this administration is doing. So that's good news. But here, let me tell you why I'm excited.
Okay, what are you excited about?
I'm excited because I travel, as you do, and it's gotten so bad going to the airport. You have to go so early, and then when you go through TSA, number one, everybody there needs a class on like how to be nice, like how to treat the public. You feel like you're a criminal. You feel like you're being yelled at. Stand here, take that out. The people are barking orders at you.
Now we are in Chicago, so a little disclaimer out there.
Yeah, but it gives Chicago a bad name. I mean, you got people yelling at you, impatient, acting like you're a nuisance, like you're flying and you're a nuisance. You're taking your shoes off. I get so sick and tired of having to take my shoes off, all because of one crazy guy that tried to plant a bomb in his shoe that did not work. I'm like, the technology we should have by now, you should be able to tell if someone has a bomb in their shoe without making every single person take their shoes off. I had to take my belt off. And let me I'm venting a little bit.
Right.
The last time I went through, I got the special pass. I got like the fast lane. I went through all the protocols, and I don't have to take my shoes off. I don't have to take my belt off. But evidently, when I went through, something went off, and I find myself stripping down like everybody else that doesn't have the special card. And then I got some guy patting me in my groin and my rear end.
Got the special treatment.
Oh, I got the special treatment. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. In fact, I got to the place where I have kind of made an inner vow that if I'm within 8 hours of where I'm supposed to be, I'm just going to drive because I'm just sick and tired of the whole system. And so I can't tell you what good news it was to read this headline. Senators introduce bill to abolish TSA and to privatize airport security. Now, obviously, before we try to celebrate this, like, what does this have to do with biblical worldview? Why would the privatization of a public, basically of our national security, or at least in flying. Mm-hmm. Obviously, this was instituted because there was concern over safety. And let me just say, we all should share that concern. We want to make sure that our international or national travel and aviation and all that, we're safe. We don't have terrorist activity. But what's this got to do? Like why do Christians in general, why do we celebrate the privatization of a lot of what the federal government has tried to do?
Oh, yeah. I mean, because you federalize things because you trust big government. And I'll say people who subscribe to biblical worldview understand the power of big government. It's not a good
Let me ask you this question, because you're also a business consultant person, all right? You understand systems and processes and efficiency and all of that kind of stuff. So in general, does a private business run more smoothly, economically, more efficiently, and produce a better product? Or does a government-run agency produce more safety, efficiency, and a better product?
Yeah, obviously the private.
And why?
And the main reason
Wait. What did you say? You said something that I got.
Some people will
obviously you said, well, not so obvious to others, but why? You said obviously private. Why?
Well, for most industries, it's private. Because if you go into the nonprofit, sometimes it gets a little confusing because cause-based versus, profit-based. I'm not going to get into all that. But in general, when you're a profit-based business, which airports are, privatized works better. A simple reason why. Because there's more direct lines of accountability. The U.S. federal government, based on what we found by DOJ recently, sounds like the least accountable least accountable entity known to mankind, by and large, because no one really cares. And when you spend money, no one cares. When it's privatized, when you spend money, when you lose money, the shareholder cares.
Okay. There's accountability all around. So if we're bleeding dollars and we're ineffective and we hire more and more people and they're poorly trained, then if you're a federal worker, there's almost zero accountability because of unions and other types of things, almost zero accountability. It's hard to fire these people. In fact, the President of the United States is trying to fire people who haven't even been doing anything, and getting all kinds of pushback.
Most people don't have the will to fire because when you're in such a large bureaucracy, no one, it's musical chair, nobody cares. It doesn't matter because it doesn't affect your paycheck. It's the American taxpayer, and the American taxpayer is not faceless, is a large entity. It's it's someone else's money. But when it's privatized, you got shareholders, you got owners, you got people says, this is my money, therefore I am going to care. I am going to track down where the leak is. I am going to figure out how it can be more efficiency.
And if the government is supervising these folks, and they can say, look, you guys are doing a poor job. We're going to get another private organization to come in here and do a better job. So here's the truth. The TSA's failures, it says, run deeper than many Americans know. We're quoting here Representative Lee. The TSA has not only intruded into the privacy and personal space of most Americans, I could vouch for that. It has also repeatedly failed tests to find weapons and explosives. They conducted tests on TSA personnel. They failed to detect 95% of the dangerous items smuggled through security checkpoints. After reforms, 2 years later, it revealed that the agency still had a failure rate of 80%. That means only 1 in 5 weapons that they tried passing through were discovered. So number one, they're not doing a very good job. And then number two, you feel like you're a criminal when you're going through because of just poor people skills and everything else.
That's an interesting case because if you're privatized, again, I'm not saying I don't know all the details, but I'm in general, if you privatize security, as an airport, you're incentivized to probably give them customer service training because you want it to be a friendly atmosphere because you're in competition with other airports.
Absolutely.
But when you're a government, you don't really care because you're just do whatever you want, right?
And have you ever picked up somebody at the airport? We've got people outside that are just as rude as people inside, yelling at you, get out of this lane. You don't need to have people outside yelling at you while you're dropping somebody off or picking someone up. This isn't rocket science. Nobody needs to supervise this. Leave us alone. But this is the kind of horrific public service that we receive. And again, it's not across the board. If there's a TSA employee that's like, man, I'm a nice guy. Well, bless your heart. I'm so glad you're a nice guy. But in general, you need to probably train the rest of the folks who really aren't nice guys and gals.
To be fair, I do think it's probably airport specific. If you go to a smaller town, I think my experience in this airport, the smaller town TSA agents are much more friendly. We do live in Chicago.
We're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. But nevertheless, a private organization will not only provide better safety, better training, better care, and they won't be ripping open your suitcase and rifling through your underwear to find the fact that you have an oversized, tube of toothpaste. For crying out loud, can we please move beyond, this barbaric Stone Age understanding of a security?
I do wonder, if it's privatized, that there will be more incentives for people to apply technology to all of these and make it more efficient and make it better. What I've learned again about U.S. government with DOGE in the last couple of months is that there is such resistance to put any type of new technology infrastructure in.
How about Social Security Administration run from a cave with paper documents? I mean, It's unbelievable how inefficient our government is.
Adapting new technology should be is one of the fastest ways to build efficiency and profit margins. So that's another argument.
All right.
Privatization.
Let's move on to some more exciting things. Trump approves J.D. Vance to rid the Smithsonian of improper ideology. If you go to our nation's capital and you want to take your kids to the museum, to the Smithsonian Institute, you are inundated with all kinds of leftist, ridiculous narratives, all right? President Donald Trump on Thursday revealed his intention to force changes at the Smithsonian Institution with an executive order that targets funding for programs that, quote, advance divisive narratives and improper ideology. Trump claimed that there has been a concerted and widespread effort over the past decade to rewrite American history by replacing, quote, objective facts with, quote, distorted narrative driven by ideology rather than truth, adding that it casts the founding principles of the United States in a negative light. Now, let's talk about this for a minute, because what we have in our nation right now is a battle of worldviews. And what I'd like to suggest is when you attack America and when your museums teach young people to hate America, and let me give you an illustration here. The National Museum of African American History and Culture has proclaimed that, quote, hard work, quote, unquote, individualism, nuclear family are aspects of white culture. The forthcoming Smithsonian American History Museum,
a women's history museum, plans on celebrating the exploits of male athletes participating in women's sports. And so what we're dealing with here, to be clear, let's talk about this. Hard work, individualism, nuclear family. Are those biblical concepts or are those white concepts? What's really happening here is an attack on principles that we have derived from the scriptures. To suggest that hard work is somehow a white concept misses the whole point. It's not a white concept, it's a Christian concept. And this is how the West was shaped and formed and how the West has got ahead. To suggest that not working hard is somehow a virtue, or that somehow that represents a different culture's viewpoint, and that you're racist for suggesting that people work hard? Well, I don't know the full context of that. That sounds really bizarre, because you're kind of like,
let me help you out. Here's some context. I got a whole aspects and assumptions of whiteness and white culture. And I mean, it lists things that you're going, you got to be kidding
Positive
me.
work ethic, emphasis on scientific method, rugged individualism, status, power, authority, future orientation.
This is the whole Protestant work ethic, which is included in here as somehow being white. What we've often suggested is American exceptionalism is colorblind in the sense that anybody who's willing to work hard, anybody who's willing to show up on time, anybody who's willing to have a sense of responsibility and hard work, you're going to get ahead in America. That's what our nation is founded upon. So anyway, this is all this
really bizarre. And I think if you're non-white, you look at that, you'd be like, what? Wait, so you're saying my culture doesn't teach hard work? I think
Well,
hard
yeah, I
work
hope
is...
it would be insulting to anybody.
How does that work? So...
Anyway,
people,
Trump's saying, get rid of it all. And I'm glad. I'd like to be able to go to a museum and celebrate our nation, not whiteness, blackness, brownness, whatever. Celebrate our nation and celebrate what our nation stands for without all this divisive ideology that separates us and puts us into race and gender-based camps, which do nothing to foster.
I just feel like that artwork in itself kind of like violates everybody. it insults every race.
I guess. I mean, I don't.
Anyways.
Anyway, I don't get it. But anyway, I'm glad they're cleaning it all up. Let's get to some more. We've had so much to talk about. NPR and PBS were called to Congress, the leaders, and I'm glad that it's time to pay the piper. I mean, if you've watched any of those clips, I don't know if you saw them, but
did not have appetite to watch it.
Oh my goodness, they had the lady who's now in charge of NPR, and they were just absolutely grilling her with the truth. Some of the things that she said. You know, it turns out that in the entire NPR organization, I don't know how many people they employ with our tax dollars. There's not one opposing viewpoint. There's not one Republican among the entire staff. I mean, their worldview is so far to the left, and the sad thing is we're paying for all of this. Same thing with a public broadcasting system. Marjorie, MGT? Marjorie Greene Taylor. I just love her because she beats people up with the truth sometimes and asks them questions that they're just unwilling to answer, at least in a straightforward manner. But she showed a clip that PBS produced of a transgender guy dressed with a big blonde wig, overblown lips, dress, doing some perverted dance and teaching. It was some program that PBS put forward. And what I love is she just looked at the person and said, how is this children's broadcasting? This is child abuse. This is sick. This is perverted. This is disgusting. Or she just called it out and said what we should be saying. How in the world do you call this children's programming, and how in the world are we paying for it? So when we're looking at the massive deficit that we're facing right now, and we're trying to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, they get $550 million of our money to poison children and to poison the minds of the American people and to promote. They promote on NPR the genderqueer dinosaur. Hey, there's a program you'd want your kids to be watching, the genderqueer dinosaur. I mean, this is disgusting, and it's finally we're getting to the bottom of it, but I hope Congress will just pull the plug on this because it's long overdue. Also wanted to highlight, again, great news, that Planned Parenthood is under assault again. You know, one of the foundational principles of our form of government is that we should not force our citizens to fund things that they find to be repulsive. And Planned Parenthood has been about death, and now they're transitioning their business model not only to killing babies, but to castrating and mutilating children because they realize that this transgender injections of hormones is big business. So now they're not only killing kids, but they're maiming kids. I mean, this organization is disgusting, and it's long overdue that we get rid of them. Let's talk a little bit about waste with Planned Parenthood. And even before we get into the waste, I saw this, and you talked about this as well as we were chatting beforehand. It turns out that Planned Parenthood recently gave kids coloring books, not to color little pictures of bunnies or even purple dinosaurs. I mean, I can think of a lot of coloring book themes. No, these were giving kids coloring books with pictures of genitals. And we can't even show you this, but we've got some nice colorfully drawn breasts that kids can color. Here we have a male anatomy. Here we've got a woman's private part. And right next to a word search game, you can color a woman's vagina. I mean, this is unbelievable. This was handed out to kids in Kentucky at a March 21st health event, handed out by complimentary of Planned Parenthood. Now, again, what is Planned Parenthood doing giving coloring books to kids with pieces parts, all right, with plumbing, men and women plumbing parts on it. And of course, several of the parents were completely blindsided by this and outraged. At first, Planned Parenthood denied it, and then finally they had to go, okay, we did hand them out. Well, first of all, who even created this garbage, this perversion? And secondly, who would think to go hand it out without even giving parents any forewarning? But this has been going on for a long, long time. It's been going on with our tax dollars. And I'm glad that this is now under assault by our president. And ultimately, he's not coming at it at this point with just that it's wrong to use our tax dollars for this. Planned Parenthood also has integrated DEI into their operating system. And so now we want to make it equal opportunity, red and yellow, black and white, whoever you are, to work for Planned Parenthood, and you can all kill babies together. We're not going to have any kind of bias. Anyway, this is long overdue.
It's just interesting because, imagine, the government at a Smithsonian event handing out creationist booklets, but Bible booklets for kids to color. You got Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, and
exactly.
It would be.
What would happen to the left?
To the left,
happened?
right?
Yeah.
People will be there will be so much outrage, but essentially is the government linking with a religious organization. So it's interesting because as much as you want to say, well, separation of church and state, which is not in the Constitution, what happens is inevitably government is going to be linked to some type of religion. There is really institutional separation, yes, but government is not going to be separated from a religious worldview. And basically what NPR and Planned Parenthood aligning themselves with the U.S. government, and this has been going on for how long, is simply, once again, pointing to the fact that the U.S. government or any government cannot detach themselves from some type of religious operating system. It's going to leak out one way or another. And here's some obvious evidence
and
of
they'd
this.
be screaming bloody murder if they, like you said, if the shoe was put on the other foot.
$600 million sent to do like a trans dinosaur or whatever you want to call it. Like imagine like the U.S. government pays $100 million a year to Livingstone's Church for us to operate our podcast.
That'd be great.
but
that's the best idea I've heard in a long time. Can someone send that up the pipe? All right.
Well, as our senators to do that, but people would be outraged, right?
Absolutely.
People would. But it's the same principle. They're promoting a religious philosophy that they want to cloud it under some type of science and whatever, but it's just religion.
And it's perverted. I mean, let's just say what it is.
Yes.
It's perverted. And when you look at Planned Parenthood's business model, they've made all kinds of claims over the years about what kind of services they provide to help women. The big one they made was mammograms. Remember that? Mm-hmm. Breast care at Planned Parenthood. Well, we found out that Cecile Richards, who has since passed away, but she was a former president and CEO of Planned Parenthood, she confessed under oath, finally, no, quote, we do not have mammogram machines at our business offices, okay? Of course they don't, because they're not making money. They're not trying to preserve life. They're killing life, and they're sterilizing kids, and they are cutting off America's future as it relates to young people through their business model. That's how they make money. The other thing that's crazy is here we have a not-for-profit organization that's receiving taxpayer dollars. It's supposed to be serving women. And the CEO of Planned Parenthood, you want to guess what the CEO of this non-for-profit makes? Almost $1 million a year, $900,000 plus dollars.
That's just on paper. I wonder how much is paid under the table.
Well,
anyways.
Absolutely. No, those are great questions. And in fact, I found this to be interesting. The average clinic director makes about $350,000.
Wow.
So the local clinic director is making some pretty good money right there. Planned Parenthood currently has a Texas lawsuit for $1.8 billion. It turns out that they were accused of filing thousands of erroneous Medicaid claims, $4.3 million worth of phony medical claims in the state of Texas. And this one's interesting. Remember during COVID, when the government was trying to help small businesses stay afloat after they trampled their liberties and forced them to shut down? Well, it turns out that Planned Parenthood raided those small business funds to the tune of over $90 million that they claimed and were paid back from the Biden administration, again, to Planned Parenthood. What do they do with this money? Well, they bankroll Democratic candidates. They bankroll agendas that support their business. It's completely corrupt. It's been going on for years and years and years. They also have a written document teaching teens to protect their privacy from their parents during a virtual visit to Planned Parenthood. And so now here's some specific guidelines, like take the call in the bathroom or in a parked car or use headphones. They're absolutely undermining parental authority. They're corrupt. We just saw where they were exposed and have been exposed for many, many years now of actually late-term abortions, harvesting the baby's organs and reselling these organs on the black market or for research purposes, which is illegal. So this is an absolutely disgusting organization. It's long overdue to be defunded. We should demand that our money does not go there. And Trump's finally, now this is a first step. This is only going to involve a very small portion of I think this was Title X funding or something like that. I forget how it was. But anyway, I'm just glad to see finally we have a president with enough courage to say, you know what, we really shouldn't be spending hard-earned tax dollars to murder and mutilate babies and our future. So praise God for that. We should be, again, I sit back and I go, as a church, we should be celebrating all of these. Are great things. These are pro-life. These are biblical policies and biblical principles and Christian worldview in operation, connecting the dots. And we should be praying for our president and celebrating what he's doing across the board here, which has been phenomenal. Now, let me highlight one other thing. We've only got a few more minutes. This coming Friday night, our Lake County Right to Life will be hosting their 52nd annual event. And I want to give a shout out to Lynn Reynolds and to so many folks that are doing a wonderful job in that organization. But the host that they're having, the speaker for this year's banquet, is a guy by the name of Mark Houck. And a lot of our listeners might not be familiar with who Mark is. But if you remember, under the Biden regime, Mark Houck is a father, family man, pro-life activist. He's got 7 children. And on September the 23rd of 2022, the Houck family was startled awake early in the morning by banging on the front door and the ringing of the doorbell. And when he answered the door, Mark came face to face with about 15 FBI agents on his property. He says, as soon as I started coming down the stairs, then a gun is pointed at me. This is Mark's wife, mother of 7 children, said in a video that they put together. I woke up and the girls were outside the door crying. I asked them what was wrong, and then they didn't answer. And I looked down the stairs and I saw guns pointing at mommy and daddy, 9-year-old Joshua said. So what was this guy's crime to have 15 SWAT agents from the FBI show up on his doorstep? He was convicted, or they tried to convict him of the FACE Act, simply for being out in front of a clinic. He was not blocking the door. He was not violent. He was not out of control. He was simply out there praying and standing up for life. He says, quote, it was an act of pure terror on the part of the government to intimidate me, instill fear in my family and in the pro-life movement. The fact that they raided this patriot's home with guns drawn and put him through a costly legal process shows how willing our own government is to terrorize those they politically disagree with. That's what we were dealing with for the last 8 years under the Biden administration. Imagine, again, law-abiding, pro-life Christian father raising 7 kids, his only crime being that he had the courage to stand out in front of an abortion mill and prayerfully disagree with what was going on inside. This is the kind of stuff that makes my blood boil, because the whole goal of this was to intimidate his family, traumatize his children, and again, take him through a costly legal battle that the government pays for with our tax dollars, right, but he's got to pay for out of his own pocket while he's trying to raise 7 kids. The goal of this is to destroy him, to destroy his family, to terrorize the pro-life movement, and this was funded by your government. This is what Trump's dealing with right now, the weaponization of all these branches. And he's put some really great people in there to go after it. And again, we should be supporting him unless you like having your home raided early in the morning and dealing with this kind of intimidation. I mean, I can't imagine my kids seeing me carted off by ATF agent or FBI agents, SWAT teams. These guys are coming on full gear, and it says during this time they treated him like a criminal. He's going to be speaking Friday night, and I really want to encourage those of you that can come out and be a part of this, support what's going on, and hear this harrowing story about what happens when government, becomes your enemy. Which is what we saw far too often under the Biden administration. Your thoughts on that? I put myself in this guy's shoes. This happened to Trump himself. This happened to a former president.
Well, this type of thing has happened throughout the history of the world. Government tyranny.
Not in America.
In general, not in America until recently. And the reason this type of stuff happened, in my opinion, is because people don't believe there is a higher authority. When you feel like you're the highest authority, then you do stuff like that because you feel like, if I disagree with someone politically, like opposite ends, in my mind, I wouldn't even have all authority in the world. I can get away with it. I wouldn't do that to their family and to their kids because that's wrong. That's simply wrong. But to be able to do that so effortlessly to in America today, in my mind, is because...
Let me just say this. It's not only wrong, it's intentionally designed to traumatize. Again, this guy's not a criminal. He's not hiding. He hasn't left the country. He's not a threat to other people. He's not a threat to his neighbors. There could have been 1,000 other scenarios that would have shielded his wife, his children. It could have been a phone call. He's a law-abiding citizen. Hey, we need to meet with you. We want to talk with you. This guy's treated like he's a drug lord.
Well, in this scenario, if there's a public forum, 99% of people would agree that that's wrong. But the U.S. government, the FBI, did it. That tells me there's a big disconnect between what we generally think is right and wrong versus when you have so much power, you think you're the ultimate authority, you can get away with it, you can do that. Now, this has happened throughout history. Every emperor, king, that's what they do. They're the ultimate authority. For that to happen in America today, tell us that our U.S. government our U.S. religion's more similar to the pagan religion of the past than the Christian world we would have now, because that's an evidence of that in my books.
Well, I think you're 100% right. I also think I saw the chief of staff for Trump giving a great civics lesson when he was talking about the fact that the chief executive of America is the president, according to the Constitution. He's the only office holder that's voted on by all the American people. And so when Trump comes in and says, look, we're going to clean up the FBI, and you have lifelong bureaucrats in the FBI who are resisting the president, this is where you have to play hardball. It's the same thing as we talked about in the last episode with the judges that are out of control. You are overstepping your constitutional bounds when you resist the president of the United States of America, and you're resisting his will, which represents the will of the American people who overwhelmingly supported his agenda. So we're trying to clean all this up. It looks disruptive right now because it is. It looks harsh right now because it is. We're having power struggles within government agencies that need to quickly be addressed. It's like what's happening with the mayors of many of our urban area, our deep blue cities, when they're basically saying we're not going to work with the ICE, to deport criminals from this country. Well, you are violating the law at that point, and you probably need to be put in jail. Not probably, you should be put in jail if you continue to violate the Constitution of the United States. So, this looks very aggressive and everything. Well, because people are making it have to be aggressive because you're not obeying the law. So there's going to be a little bit of aggressiveness. And again, for our lefties that are these kind of, weak-hearted, peace at all costs type of people, it's going to look terribly aggressive to you, but we're trying to restore the rule of law in America. And this is a good thing, which means you have to deal with lawlessness. You got to deal with all the people being paid $400 to create signs and import them from the East Coast to stand out in front of Tesla dealerships and act like they're outraged. It's the same nonsense we saw when we were burning our cities down and throwing bricks through businesses and everything else. This is all orchestrated by the left, and it's all lawlessness, and it needs to be stopped firmly, decisively, and quickly, or else this continues to happen. It's what's happening on our university campuses when we're trying to investigate anti-Semitic behavior on these campuses. It all goes together. It's all the spirit of lawlessness. And as you read your Bible and as you look at what's happening, you go, you know what? Anytime there's lawlessness, just blatant lawlessness, it comes from the pit of hell. Should not be happening in the United States of America under our form of government. And to stop it means you have to demonstrate force, but it's legitimate force. It's biblical force. It's constitutional force to deal with the lawlessness that we're seeing everywhere promoted by the left. So I get it. You know, some people are going to be shocked by this, but you should be shocked by this. You should be shocked by lawlessness.
Well, I mean, to rule out something like that is going to take a lot. And I think right now is the birthing pains of whatever is going to happen. And sometimes I'm very optimistic. Other times I'm thinking, I don't know if we've got enough time.
Well, what I love is, I mean, I agree with you. It's an aggressive approach that we're seeing that I can't give enough standing ovations for. But I also realize those on the other side, you know, this is a big, massive gravy train. I mean, there's people who have made you can't work for a non-for-profit. Let me just make it real clear. Pastor Andrew and I were not making $900,000 a year working at Living Stones. And that should be the case for any public servant, anybody that's working in a not-for-profit entity to serve other people who get their money basically as a donation, right? As a gift from other people. It should not be happening. And so who's going to be screaming the loudest? The people that are milking the system. So anybody with common sense goes, okay, why are these people so against exposing fraud and waste and corruption? Why? Well, maybe because they're the beneficiaries of fraud and waste and corruption, and their whole livelihoods being radically adjusted by this. Yay! We should be cheering that on. Yeah. But unfortunately, as you said, will there be enough time? Do we have enough time to get to the root of this? Well, I pray that we do. I really do. I pray that we do. So in the meantime, again, a final plug. Come on out Friday. Let's support folks like this who have been through hell, and let's make sure we're doing everything we can to make sure it doesn't happen again. And let's continue our fight to stop the taking of unborn life in this country, especially when it's sponsored by the federal government and paid for by our tax dollars. So we look forward until next week. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. So much to talk about. Thanks for being a part of our Thursday morning worldview discussions. We'll see you next Thursday.